In a small factory in Brighton, Michigan, a building that until recently had been making motorhomes, workers are hand-building a car. Not assembling, hand-building. They are moving shock towers forward, cutting and repositioning suspension components, modifying inner fenders by hand, fitting the largest hood scoop ever put on a production Mustang. The reason for all of this is simple. Ford built an engine so large it wouldn't fit in the car Ford wanted to put it in. Ford's own production line at Dearborn had no solution, so Ford sent the cars to Kar Kraft, a small specialist shop in Brighton, whose previous major project was the GT40 that beat Ferrari at Le Mans, the same shop that made motorhomes before that. Every single Boss 429 Mustang ever built came through that building. All 1,356 of them, each one by hand, each one bearing a special Kar Kraft door plate that confirmed where it was made. In May 2026, one of those cars sold at auction for $660,000. So why did Ford build a NASCAR engine into a road car it couldn't even assemble itself? And if the Boss 429 won 26 races in its first NASCAR season, why did Ford cancel the entire program the following year? This is the Boss 429 story. By 1967, Chrysler's 426 Hemi was dominating American motorsport. NASCAR, drag strips, everywhere that mattered. Ford had nothing to answer it. The solution was to build a new engine, a semi-hemispherical 429 cubic inch V8, designed specifically for high-speed endurance racing. Ford called it the Boss 429. It was an engine built for the track, not the road. But NASCAR had a rule. To race an engine, you had to sell it. At least 500 road-going cars had to be fitted with any engine a manufacturer wanted to race. You couldn't put something on the track that the public couldn't buy. Ford chose the Mustang as the road-going host. It was America's most famous performance car. It made commercial sense. There was one problem. The Boss 429 engine was too wide to fit in the Mustang's engine bay. The shock towers were in the way. Ford's own Dearborn production line had no way to accommodate the modification at scale. Enter Kar Kraft, Ford's exclusive specialist contractor in Brighton, Michigan, whose people had already built the GT40. Ford diverted Mustangs off the main production line, shipped them to Brighton, and let Kar Kraft figure out what Ford couldn't. The man who made the Boss 429 look like the Boss 429 was called Larry Shinoda. Shinoda was Japanese-American. He'd spent years at General Motors, where his most famous work was the split-window 1963 Corvette Stingray, still widely considered one of the most beautiful American cars ever made. In 1968, a Ford executive named Bunky Knudsen recruited Shinoda away from GM and brought him to Dearborn. Knudsen gave Shinoda his first assignment. Look at what Ford was calling the SR2, the car that would become the Boss 302. What Shinoda found was a disaster. The SR2 was covered in fake exhaust outlets, chrome cladding, big rocker panels, oversized hood pins. Shinoda described it in his own words. They had all this chrome on it. Big fake cast exhaust outlets, really big side scoops. I took all that off. He replaced it with clean lines, a C-stripe decal, a rear spoiler, a front air dam. A car that looked fast because it was fast, not because it was trying to look fast. The Boss 302 became iconic within weeks of launch. The name came from Shinoda's evasiveness. The project was secret. When anyone asked what he was working on, he told them it was the boss's car, referring to Knudsen. The nickname stuck. Both the 302 and the 429 inherited it. The most iconic name in Mustang history came from a designer not wanting to tell people what he was working on. Every Boss 429 started life as a standard Mustang on Ford's Dearborn production line. At a certain point in the assembly process, each car was diverted, pulled off the line, loaded onto a truck, sent to Brighton. At Kar Kraft, the transformation began. Shock towers moved forward to make room for the engine block. A-arms lowered. Inner fenders cut and reshaped. Heavy-duty suspension fitted. Battery relocated to the trunk to improve weight distribution. And finally, the engine dropped in, the hood scoop fitted, the Kar Kraft door plate installed. Each car was produced at a considerable loss to Ford. The modifications were too extensive and too bespoke to make economic sense at any volume. Ford did it anyway, because without the road cars, there was no NASCAR program. Every Boss 429 that left Brighton received two things: a special Kar Kraft bumper sticker and a door data plate confirming where it was made. Ford built the most sought-after Mustang in history in a building that previously made motorhomes. This is not a metaphor. It is simply what happened. The homologation worked. In 1969, Ford's NASCAR cars powered by the Boss 429 engine won 26 races. 26! The Hemi had been answered. The program was working. The plan was to continue. Then came September 11th, 1969. Ford's president, Bunky Knudsen, the man who had commissioned the Boss 429, hired Shinoda, and built the entire racing program from scratch, was fired. Henry Ford II sent his head of public relations to Knudsen's home the night before to warn him. The next morning, when Ford made it official, Knudsen said, "I'm shocked." Ford replied, "I imagine you would be." With Knudsen gone, Ford's stock car racing program died the same day. No farewell, no wind down. The program that had just won 26 NASCAR races was canceled because the man who started it was no longer in the building. Shinoda, loyal to Knudsen, followed him out. The man who named the Boss, the man who designed the Boss, both gone within weeks of each other. Production continued through 1970. 499 more cars, because the contracts were already in place. Then the Brighton line stopped. Kar Kraft's Boss 429 assembly ended. The converted motorhome factory went back to other work. 1,356 cars across 2 years. That is the entire production run of the most capable Mustang Ford had ever built. The Boss 429 was never built to be sold. It was built to be raced. The road car was a legal technicality, a homologation requirement dressed in grabber blue and calypso coral, fitted with a door plate from a shop in Michigan that the buying public had never heard of. The homologation car outlasted the race program, the executive who commissioned it, and the designer who named it. The Boss 429 was called the Boss because one man didn't want to tell people what he was working on. He was fired before the program was finished anyway. Although that's it for the Boss 429 story, while I was researching this, I found one thing I couldn't leave out. Years after production ended, a man called Graffelman began tracking down what he believed was Shinoda's personal Boss 429 prototype, the car at Kar Kraft that the engineers called Larry's Boss. He found a car with the initials LB stamped on the steering wheel. A former Ford engineer who had worked with Shinoda confirmed what Graffelman suspected. The initials stood for Larry's Boss. Shinoda had driven his own car for a couple of years after leaving Ford, then sold it to his tailor in the early 1970s. From there, it disappeared into private hands for decades, until someone started following the trail. Larry Shinoda died in 1997 at the age of 67. He designed the split-window Corvette. He designed both Boss Mustangs. He named the most iconic performance car in Ford history. He spent less than 2 years at Ford. In those 2 years, he stripped the chrome off a car that would have embarrassed the brand, gave the Boss its name, and handpicked every detail that made it iconic. He was fired. The car he named sold for $660,000 last month. Some legacies outlast their paychecks.